We want to go ahead and turn the music down and get our conversation started just because I have been with both of the women that are on our panel today, and they are so full of energy and wisdom. I want to just get as much out of our time as we possibly can. So, we are so excited to have you join us for this collaboration between Women Work and Calling, which is a national initiative out of the Denver Institute of Faith and Work and the Max Dupree Center for Leadership at Fuller Seminary. My name is Quinlan Lee, and I lead strategic partnerships at a nonprofit that does community development in Charlotte, North Carolina. But for the purposes of today's webinar, it may be pertinent for you to know that over the last 30 years, I have done a whole bunch of other things. I've been an event planner for large and national conventions. I've written over 50 children's books. I've worked as a literary agent, and most recently, I was an ordained pastor leading discipleship at a large megachurch. So if we're talking about ages and stages, I've lived a lot of ages and stages, and that's what this four-part webinar that we've been walking through is all about. We're exploring the challenges and opportunities that are unique to each distinctive season of life, and we want to talk about it through the actual experiences of women who have lived them and led through them. So today we're going to be talking about midlife, which it's one of those funny stages that most people don't, they're like, well, that's not really me, until all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm doing the math, and even if I live to be 100, yes, I am definitely in midlife. So we are going to be talking about that stage with two just wise sages. I think we can own that, can't we? For sure. So first we have Jasmine Bellamy. I'm going to give us a wave. And I'm going to read this because it was so beautifully written. She is a love scholar practitioner, joyful disruptor, and business and culture transformer. She is the founder of Love 101 Ministries, dedicated to the theology and practice of love, and hosts the Call to Love experience. She also leads The Loving Leader, which is a purpose driven, evidence based consultancy that transforms leaders and workplace cultures from the inside out. She is the former vice president of merchandising, planning, and allocation and head of community and culture at Reebok. She's also the creator and co facilitator of Courageous Conversations, a platform that inspires communal culture transformation. And here's another fun fact that I thought was awesome. She is also among Sports Illustrated's top 100 influential Black women in sports. So that is very cool. We also have with us today Dr. Angela Williams Gorell. She's a speaker, podcaster, author, and consultant. Angela is the author of books such as Always On, The Gravity of Joy, and Braving Difficult Decisions: What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. Media sources such as the New York Times, NPR, and Washington Post have highlighted her research. And both of these women will be telling you a little bit more about their stories as we get into our conversation. She speaks and writes about joy, meaning, finding the life worth living, and the intersection of spiritual and mental health. She has provided thought leadership and consulting for numerous organizations, including the U.S. Army and the NBA. She has also taught at Yale and Baylor Universities and Fuller Seminary. Are you guys ready to get started? All right, let's go. We thought as we were having our conversation and planning our time together that it would be helpful to bookend our conversation, not just with us kind of giving you a lot of words, but to pause at the beginning and the end. And so we just came up as we were sharing things on Monday that all of us have a shared affection for Howard Thurman. So some of you may not have known who Dr. Howard Thurman is. He was an influential African American theologian, writer, and civil rights leader who emphasized love, justice, and compassion in the struggle for equality, and he wrote powerfully about Jesus and spiritual disciplines. So before we jump into our conversation, Angela's going to share a quote from Dr. Thurman that was just helpful in her journey and we thought might frame some of our time together.
Okay, so you're ready for it?
Okay, let's go.
So this comes from his writing. It's called How Good to Center Down. How good it is to center down, to sit quietly and see oneself pass by. The streets of our minds seethe with endless traffic. Our spirits resound with clashings, with noisy silences, while something deep within hungers full.
Yep.
With full intensity, we seek, ere the quiet passes, a fresh sense of order in our living, a direction, a strong, sure purpose that will structure our confusion and bring meaning in our chaos.
Mm.
We look at ourselves in this waiting moment, the kinds of people we are, motives that order our days. What is the end of our doings? Where are we trying to go? Where do we put the emphasis? And where are our values focused? For what end do we make our sacrifices? Where is my treasure? And what do I love most in life?
Mm. Thanks, Angela. I appreciate that. So, to get us started, I think the most helpful thing will be to have each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves, but especially use this lens of kind of your most recent season that you're in right now, and a little bit of the milestones, experiences, happenings that led you to where you are now. So, Jasmine, do you want to start us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Quinlan and Angela. Thank you for really just grounding us today in Thurman. The busyness of life is real. And I just, felt that that was such an opportunity for us to center down. So thank you, because it sets the tone and the pace of our conversation today. You shared my bio, which says a lot of the things that I am doing in this current season. I will also mention that, which is not in there. I'm a mom of a 21-year old and an 18-year-old who's actually graduating from high school this weekend. Um, and I shared as we were kind of getting ourselves together that I'm divorced for and separated for the past 7 years after 22 years of marriage. And so when I think about the stages that I have kind of come to, it is so all of that was a part of it. All of that shaped and formed where I am now. I'm in a season of transition. Um, Self-employed now, really leaning into my scholarship and my research. Um, One thing we didn't have in the bio is that I'm a doctoral student at Fuller Seminary in the Global Leadership program, focusing on the redemptive imagination of the marketplace. I, when my dean jokes and calls himself a late in life academic, and I joke and call myself a geriatric academic, because a part of that journey, there's no way I thought I was going back to get a second master's. Um, my kids were grown, and I was a faux empty nester because I had one in boarding school and one in college. And there's no way I thought I would be pursuing a master's of arts in theology and then also now a doctorate. But part of this season that I am is a season of transition.
Mhm.
And while transition can be disorienting and we don't have control, we don't get to say where it's going. Um, I am having, I am the most alive right now.
That's really
And it's because this journey has allowed me to really understand who I am, what I was put on this planet. Like, if I know anything, I was put on this planet to be loved.
mm,
And what I'm learning that the context in particular has become really clear that it's also to transform the marketplace. And
mhm.
so, but I had no idea that if you would have asked me in college, what am I going to be when I grow up? I sure wouldn't say this. But it's the realest thing, it's the realest thing. And, I'll just add another piece to that. When I think about Howard Thurman and why he's so important to me, he has shaped my inner life
Mhm.
as well. And so he's a contemplative, he's a mystic, and I have found myself there. Again, nothing I would have thought about when I was growing up in the Catholic Church in the first half of my life, or in a non denominational megachurch in New York in the latter half of my life. But I find myself in this very, this place where solitude and solace and it is just so much, it's so rich to me, and it is the place where I can go in my inner life to fuel what it is that I'm called to do right now. And so again, these are not goals that I had for myself, but this is where my life has unfolded, and it's still unfolding. And so I'm really right now, just really being attentive to all the turns and twists on the journey, and really focusing on showing up in every space fully me.
I love that, Jasmine. And I love how you've kind of shown all the interconnectedness of some things that happen in your personal life. And we'll dig into that just a little bit, how that affected your professional life, and then how your inner life has been a piece of that. And actually, in some ways, how those have become maybe more interwoven than they were at other seasons of your life. Before Angela tells us a little bit about herself, I forgot to mention we're going to do some Q&A at the end. So if you put your questions in the chat, Naomi is going to help cull those and kind of curate those, and maybe put some of them together. And we're hopeful we'll be able to get to at least 2 or 3 at the end. So keep those coming. All right, Angela, tell us a little bit about your story and kind of where you are now, and what led you to where you are now. We'll see.
Is
Angela, you with us? She's been outside, so she's a little bit of she's on the road for us, coming in on an itinerant sort of journey. So go ahead, Angela.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. If for some reason I tried to find a quiet space where I am, and then there's another place though that might have better internet, and so if I need to go back out there, I will. But yeah, it actually is very appropriate for ages and for this conversation. Um, but a few years ago, I was hired at Yale University, I guess now 2016, to teach a class called The Life Worth Living, and to be a researcher on a research team studying joy. And it was one of those moments in your life where you just think, can life get any better than this? Like, I don't know that it can. And we might get into this later, but 8 months later, my family experienced profound grief. And then through that grief, over the next couple of years, I had to, in the midst of grief, like try to do this work. And really long story short,
Oh,
my second book came,
I feel
are you losing me?
a little bit. So why don't we'll move on to something else, and then we'll circle back to you if
Okay,
you want
okay.
to
I'll
change.
move to the better place. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we'll keep going, then we'll grab you in a minute.
Yeah.
Um, so one of the reasons that I wanted to have Jasmine, and we'll have Angela do tell us a little bit about her story in just a minute, is I have found as I started talking with other women, whether it's women that are in the workplace, women in my faith community, neighbors, all sorts of places, that it helped me to start to realize that I wasn't alone in some of the things I was experiencing at this stage of life. As I was, the way I often think of it is I was started to get a little restless, and at first I thought, oh, is this discontentment? Is this something I need to tamp down, or I need to kind of think of as a negative thing? And more as I started talking, especially to women that were a few steps ahead of me, I started to realize that no, this is normal, and actually this is helpful. Um, Jasmine, do you want to talk before we get a little bit into some of the kind of tools that you use at this time of season? We talked a little bit about some questions like, who am I? Do you want to talk just a little bit while we're waiting for Angela to jump in, kind of how those questions guided your life in this season?
Absolutely. I one of the things I just want to also kind of cycle back to a little bit is that part of that journey for me from a corporate person to a student, that divorce was a major piece of it. It was that was a moment, a death that created a new life, and the new life for me was this life of love. And I became love student, and I wanted to figure out what would it look like for me to live a life of love and commit to a practice of love. And so I just wanted to say again, how is Angela was teeing up for us how life happens. And then we I don't even want to say pivot because I know we say that a lot, but it gets integrated into us,
A better
um,
way to say it. It's
Mhm.
like
right? And it becomes
that
a
part
part
of
of
your
how we move forward. And
yeah.
so for me, that one disruption opened up an entirely new doorway that I had no idea was waiting for me. And so I did want to just add that piece. But what I was sharing, and this is kind of how we ended up on this thread of Thurman. I happened to be preaching on Mother's Day and went to Thurman, which I'll share a bit of it later. But he delivered this address called The Sound of the Genuine. And what I love about it and why I felt so strongly about using his voice on Mother's Day, it was in conversation with Mark 5. And it was all about this, the demon possessed man. And essentially, what Thurman really pulls on in the song, "The Sound of the Genuine," is Jesus's one question to this demon possessed person, and it's, "What is your name?" And I just found that so fascinating when you think about the fact that it's this idea of like there's so much noise, which is why it was so beautiful the way Angela kicked us off. There's so much noise in the world. We have so many titles as women. I have a T-shirt from when my daughter was born that says Brooks Mom. Like I lost my name. I was Brooks Mom,
Mm.
and I was somebody's wife. I was somebody's employee. I had all of these titles. And this idea that Jesus asked the question, "What is your name?" is to me just, it made me go, "Ooh, like, do we actually even know our very own names anymore?"
Mhm.
And the question that Thurman then kind of tees up and leans into in this piece is he says, "And who are you really?"
It's that really that
So really, that I just that to me is, it just feels so right for this stage that we are in to really sit with that question contemplatively.
That's really
Yeah, I think
Not in a judging way, but in a way to
unpack
bring
or
us
really
back to remember ourselves.
yeah.
I think for me, oh yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Quinlan.
No, I was just gonna say welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and we just actually were starting a little bit. Jasmine talked a little bit
Yeah,
about
I could hear the whole thing. I'm
yeah,
good.
we'll just rewind. No, she was just talking about that she said briefly that she experienced divorce, but she didn't really, she kind of brushed over it. And so she wanted to go back and just show how there was, because you had said you had profound grief, and then that's kind of when we lost you. So if you even want to pick up there of like how when we're having these stages, some things we are causing and intentional and like, oh, I'm ready to make a change, and sometimes things are coming at us that are out of our control. So you were saying you were teaching at Yale, and then you thought life could not get any better, and then grief just showed up on your doorstep in a really profound way.
Yeah, three of my family members died in 4 weeks. One to suicide. My nephew died at 22 of a heart attack. He had a heart condition we didn't know about. And then my dad died 5 days after his funeral of addiction. And so not only was this like three people I loved in such a short period of time, but they were all very tragic deaths in their own way. Um, and so this all of a sudden the very work that I was doing became like urgent for me, you know, and I wondered like joy in a world that's hurting, joy in the midst of suffering, like unthinkable. Life is not joy, like, life is a long walk toward death, you know? And then I began to wonder, like, these questions of the life worth living. You know, I'm teaching this class with undergraduates at Yale, and then all of a sudden, these questions were so live for me. Like, what is the life worth living? What does it mean to lead my life well? What does it mean for me, for life to go well? Can my family be suffering and life still be good? And so I went on this very personal journey over the next couple of years, working out my own stuff, you know? And sometimes I think for us, like, when we're doing our work, it can, for many of us, become very personal, where we ask ourselves, like, am I actually, especially if we're spiritual leaders, or if we're psychologists, like, you know, the very work that we're trying to help other people do, we realize, oh, I need to be doing that work in my own soul. And midlife really brings this up for all of us. I think, you know, I'm 42 now, and it's like that sort of like that point of 40 to 60 for women, for many of us, is sort of, okay, who am I really? How do I find myself? What is the life worth living? How do I live more awake? How do I live open to joy? And so that's what I've been. So it's like I did this work myself in a really personal way. And then I went to Baylor University and I was teaching there. I was up for promotion, I was up for tenure. And I started to feel that stuff in your soul where God's speaking to you and you're like, you can't ignore it. And God's like, I don't know if this is for you. And I don't know if there's people that are sitting on this, you know, and there's something where you're going, you know, maybe any of these questions, Thurman's questions are hitting you. Maybe some of the things Jasmine's saying are hitting you. You're saying, oh, yeah, what is my name? Who am I really? What are the ends of my doings? Or maybe you're saying, like, oh, this thing that I'm a part of, maybe it's not for me. And if it's not, what do I do about that? You know, and so I think that's sort of the space that I've been in the last few years that has, and then now that I've kind of walked that road, I'm like, oh, it's fun and joyful for me to help other people walk those similar roads. Yeah.
That's a really good segue. I'm just moving to kind of another piece of the conversation we had, of you're both walking through these seasons of transition, change, disruption, both in what you're doing professionally and your personal lives.
Mhm.
What was some of the practical tools, if you want to use that language, or even things, actions that you were taking that helps you to live this season well? And sometimes I think we pick those up on purpose, and sometimes I think they kind of we discover them in the rearview mirror. We're like, oh, that time or that experience or that practice I picked up. So, Jasmine, you want to take it and just maybe
Yeah.
share one or two things?
Yeah, definitely for me, this question arose for me months after I left my marriage around love.
Mhm.
And particularly if I had ever really considered love from God's perspective. And it was one of those things I was like, I've heard God's love forever, and I know Jesus loves me, but had I really actually thought about love through that lens? And I was blown away. I was just like, why have I never heard this in a sermon before? And I've been in church my entire life. And so that became my journey, and I became Love's student. And so two things really kind of started to come from that. I mean, there's many, but the two that I'll mention. One, I had a writing practice, and so I wrote. I just wrote and reflected, and I would, and in the writing and the reflecting, I was connecting the dots, and then this theology of love was starting to evolve. And then I remember one day, I was at the same time also starting to move into this inner contemplative of myself that I didn't know that I was. And I remember saying something like, what makes love more complicated than a meditation practice or yoga? Because in those practices, it's just you and your mat or you and your cushion. I was like, it's complicated because we're doing this with others that we
Mhm.
don't get to control. And I remember just saying out loud, love is a practice.
Mm.
And so that's when it really started connect to me that it was a practice, and what you practice you become. And
Mhm.
so for me, this intention of living a life of love every single moment of every single day became the intention of my life. And so definitely the practice of love for sure. But writing was very connected to it for me. And so that might look like journaling for people. But for me, it was essentially as I was learning as a student of love, I started to share those things that I was learning and the dots that I was connecting through Love 101 Ministries. And that's actually how Love 101 came to life, was sharing all of that. But those two practices, I would say, were hand in hand.
Writing, contemplation, and then a little bit of as you were stirring those things up, then pouring them out so
Mhm.
that you were kind of like putting them out in the wild to see how does this play with others? How what can I learn as I tee these things up? What can others then add to them? That's really great. What about you, Angela? Did you have some practices or things that you discovered that were helpful for you, and whether you were when you were at Yale, when you were at Baylor, even in transitions you're continuing to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the biggest thing that shaped my life is being someone who lives open to joy. And what that means to me is I have this sort of a metaphor for this. I feel like every day we walk through the world with like a flashlight in our hands and we're like looking for particular things. And it's like if we're looking for what's going wrong and who we're frustrated with and what there is to hate and how, things that are going to bother us. And we're expecting that things are going to be boring or hard or whatever. Like that's probably what we're going to find. Like our brain, like we find what we're looking for. But if we go through the world, we wake up each day looking for joy, which is look in and one of my definitions for joy is it's the recognition of and connection we feel to meaning, truth, beauty, goodness, and others. And for me, all of that connects us to God. And so it's like, we're walking through the world, like, what does it look like to wake up each day and to look for meaning, to look for truth, to affirm what is good and true in the world, to look for goodness in the world, in other people, in ourselves, in nature. What does it look like to look for connection with others, to expect that we're going to? And I think that sort of like walking around the world expectantly in that way has really shaped the way that I've seen and experienced the world in really profound ways. And I think a bridge to that has been gratitude. But for me, I've had to have like I've developed a really thick practice of gratitude. I would say that like in the past, I had a really thin practice of it. But now it actually involves writing a gratitude list each morning that is really as thorough as I can be about just not only like what I'm going to experience that day, but being, like richly grateful for, the health of my body on any particular day, the ability to, use my hands to type, the gift of being able to write in this world, to connect with what Jasmine's saying. And then I text that gratitude list to 5 people, and then they text their list back to me. And so there's this rich exchange of gratitude, and gratitude's contagious, just like joy is contagious. And I would say that gratitude is like on its way to joy. Gratitude is this similar to hope. It's the anticipation of joy. And then finally, I will say that community has been a huge practice in my life. There's 3 that I would love to highlight. There's a lot, but one of these communities that's really sustained my life is an online meditation group that I'm a part of. And so every morning I get online and we do these readings together. And then for 20 minutes, we meditate together online. And so and we just spend this time in silence meditating, and then someone strikes the gong, and then we do a time of sharing and talking with each other, and that's it. But this rich practice of like being with others meditating has been great for me. Secondly, I have a few women that I connect with on a regular basis that are like women that I want to be like. And like Jasmine, she's a woman I want to be like. Quinlan, we don't know each other, but Jasmine and I, we're just getting to know each other more. And so surrounding yourselves with other people that you're like, this is a kind of person that inspires me, that motivates me. And then finally, when I was experiencing that time of really profound grief, I actually became a chaplain at a women's maximum security prison. And the thing about the chaplain, it was a volunteer thing on Wednesday nights, but I'm pretty sure that they changed my life far more than I changed theirs. And that's because the thing that they gave me was they taught me what a shame-free space really is. And so
Wow.
I encourage like every person that's listening, if you don't have a shame-free space in your life, like create one and invite other people to it and meet online, in person, both back and forth whenever you can. Because there's some when you are in a shame-free space, you get to be free, period. And so yeah, I could say so much about that, but I'll stop there.
So good. And I love how both of you are kind of bringing a both and that there's inner work, there's some
Yeah.
solitude, there's some contemplation, whether that's making your gratitude list, whether that's quiet meditation, whatever that looks like, whether that's with scripture, prayer, however that
Mhm.
looks in your life. But don't just stop there, or make sure you're marrying that really well with a community around you. And I love how you're showing, Angela, that that could be community like physical, they're right next door, or it can be online. Because so often in this time of life, so things happen. We have to go to different places to maybe care for aging parents, or we're at a stage of life that as we become empty nesters, we're traveling a lot more than we used to for profession or for academics or speaking or whatever. And so then it can be easy sometimes, I think, to be isolated, but to say, okay, if this is the rhythm of life that I am in right now, where maybe I can't just have people in physical community like circling up on Wednesday nights in my living room, that doesn't mean I can't have community, that there's all
Yeah.
kinds of different ways to access that.
Can I just add a little bit to that too? One of the things that I became very intentional about when I was pursuing my master's degree at Fuller was being in community. We jokingly call it the Fullerverse, and I live in New York, and Fuller's in Pasadena. And when I tell you I am woven into that community, I am woven in. And it started in small ways. It was becoming a part of the student council, and or it was going to a celebration on campus, and but these rich, beautiful relationships were developing. And what I want to say that's really important about that, and it really connects into what we were just sharing about grief too, because as we are becoming more of ourselves, we may find the communities we've been in don't fit us anymore. And that was a big part of the grief for me, that there were all these places that I used to do all the time, but they they just weren't the meaningful spaces to me for this life that I'm in right now. And so when I tell you the relationships that I have with Fuller, whether it's folks on text or even through social or phone calls and visits and all the things, like those have been the life giving relationships for me. Those are the people who are holding all the transition that I'm going through and waiting with me in the unfolding of
Mhm.
what is next. And but it was because I was intentional about cultivating something new for it's like new wine skins for the new wine. And I just think it's important to know that the grief might include also that I don't fit where I used to anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. But
Yeah.
it is about, can I lean into moving toward those things that are life-giving, those things that are generative to me. And I mean, I just these relationships that I have that really touch my whole heart were not ones that I had 7 years ago. So I mean, that's how I got to Angela.
I would
In
say one of
oh,
the surprises for me of midlife has been having new friendships. It was kind of like I have people. I don't really need people anymore. I kind of have my people, and yet unexpectedly making new friends that are pulling me in new directions, opening my eyes to new things. And sometimes that's forced on us. Sometimes that kind of comes because we've changed where we're living or changed where we're working. But I think I would just encourage everyone that's part of this that if that's not happening to you circumstantially, that may be something you want to pursue intentionally, and not just think, well, now that I'm in this stage of life, I've already made my circles, I'm good, that there's so much more by kind of going beyond that. Angela, you were starting to say something and
Oh,
I
yeah. Oh, no, I totally agree with this, and I think this is part of the expectation of living open to joy too, is, like, expecting that other people wanna be your friend too, and, like, sometimes there's something really beautiful, I feel like, when I've had another woman say to me, like, "Hey, I'd love to be friends with you. Like, could we be friends?" And I'm like, "Yes, let's be friends, okay." And I think that, like, feel free if you're listening, like, to be bold and to say to someone, "Hey, like, I'm really inspired by this, like, I love this that you said this once, and I'm just wondering, could we go to coffee? Like, I'd love to be friends with you, And yeah, and somebody had a question here about what creates shame-free environments. And for me, this all relates to what we're saying. A shame-free friendship, a shame-free community is the kind where you can tell any kind of story. Like, there's no story that's really off limits. It's, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. This is the cycle that needs to be broken in my life. This is like, would you pray for me to like help me break this cycle in my life? Like this is the habit that I have that I need to let this go. Or this is the thing that I'm aspiring to in my life. And then like a shame-free place is a place where someone says, "Hey, you can do that. Of course you can." They're like cheering you on. When great things happen to you, they're rejoicing with you. When sad things happen to you, they're mourning with you. It's that Romans 12, like rejoice with those who rejoice. That's the kind of space and it's also the kind of space that gives you permission to have any kind of feeling. If you're feeling frustrated, angry, if you're feeling, betrayed, disappointed, if you're feeling ecstatic joy, like every feeling is welcome in that place. And even different people can have different feelings, radically different feelings on any given night. Like, so those are the sort of some of the dimensions of a shame-free space that I think are important to point out. So yeah.
and
Yeah,
those
I just wanna add, sorry,
go for it.
that, the power, the thing about shame that, and I remember just kinda coming across this through, Kurt Thompson, through his work, that shame isolates,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that ability to
Yeah.
have another human, that connection in and of itself becomes a really radical act. And I want to also say too that a shame-free space is also a place where there is love, because love, the beauty of love is, and I'm paraphrasing Thurman also, but this place where I can show up as me and I won't be criticized for it. I can
Mhm.
actually just be me,
Yeah.
and I can run the risk of being me, and and that becomes this mutual thing. And so it is also a place where love is taking root and is at hold. But I also say if it's hard for you to find those kinds of relationships, there's also spiritual direction. So I'm putting my spiritual director hat on because that's another part of the transition. I became a certified spiritual director. And so being able to, if that's the intention that you want to be in that space and you got to start there, you can start there, even, before you have this network of people that you can have that with. So it's available to you is really the point that I wanted to add in.
Well, again, I love how all these things weave together. That if you begin the journey, which often happens for us at this season of life, of asking, who am I really? You're gonna have to get quiet. You're gonna have to do some contemplation, but it's probably going to stir up some things in you that you may need others in community or a spiritual director or a trusted mentor, someone to kind of help you look at all that you're laying out on the table and for it to be a shame-free space, because sometimes shame will be rushed right when you look at who am I really. Sometimes all the yuck comes up too, and you can start to sit in that and to have a place where people go, you're still safe here, you're still loved here. That yes, that may be who you are really in some spaces, but that's not all that you are, and
Mm.
it's okay. So I want to give us some time. Naomi has been pulling together the chat and lots of people have had questions. So Naomi, you want to chime in with a question for our panelists?
Yeah, thanks, Jasmine and Angela, for all the wisdom that you're sharing. And thank you to everyone who submitted your questions as well. We have a lot, and we're probably not going to get to all of them, but I wanted to start with something that many women wrestle with, which is the idea of being many things all at one time and the variety of roles and responsibilities that we carry. So, how do you balance meeting your desire for fulfillment in work and loving your work with also meeting the needs of those around you, like kids, spouses, and bosses? That can be for Jasmine, if you want to start us off, and Angela, if you have anything to add after that.
Sure. I think the big thing I want to say, and I know we're in a midlife group, and so part of that means that our kids may not be necessarily infants if we have them. So there's stages to that too,
Mhm.
you know. And so as I was sharing, I've essentially been a faux empty nester, and then I got rid of the husband. So I kind of got some space. I mean, I'm not, it's the truth. But the idea that as my children got older, there became more space for me. When I realized I was carrying another life that I had no business carrying, that also gave me capacity. So it doesn't mean that doesn't mean that we're going to have a whole lot of space all the time. Like I have a solitude practice that is very generous, but that is because I am an empty nester. But what if you just gave yourself 5 minutes every morning? In Julia Cameron's book, that the title of it is escaping me. I'm looking on the floor, but her book talks about just writing the morning pages and giving yourself that 3 pages to write whatever is coming up for you. The artist way. Thank you. It got stuck for a minute. Yes, the artist way. Um, but give yourself that if that's all you feel you have time for, because I understand that people often feel like, well, I have no time, there's no way to start with 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be 2 hours. It could start with 5 minutes, and just giving yourself that space, that 5 minutes every day. It has this cumulative effect, and then you'll all of a sudden start to find how you can make more space for yourself. But it doesn't mean that I stopped being a mom. It doesn't mean that I stopped being an employee or whatever. It is just that I'm also identifying that there is a particularity of who I am and what I'm called to bring into life. And if I am not a good steward to that, I'm not going to show up and bless the world with the me that God ordained. And so we could have a whole conversation about what boundaries look like, but it is having the boundary to be a good steward of your own self, so that the inner and the outer, we talked about the inner life a lot, but that my outer life will also be consistent with that inner life. And we need the space and the discipline, to be able to the practice to be able to cultivate that.
And I think it's almost like couch to 5K for your soul. If you're starting at the very beginning, don't think I'm going to go, I need to be contemplative. I'm going to need to go around for 48 hours of silence at a monastery. 5 minutes a day is a great way to start. Angela, you had something to share.
Yeah, I was gonna say too that you can think of it as like your whole week as a calendar rather than like I have to get every single day like to invest in myself. Maybe it's like that your good time with yourself is like Sunday night. Maybe it's like Saturday morning, from 7 to 9 or something. Like maybe your time for yourself maybe it's not every day. You can't do every day. Maybe it's every 2 weeks for a couple hours or something, right? And then also I would invite you to think about balance across the different spheres of your life, across a year as well. So for me, like I'm known to turn off my email and not respond to it for 6 weeks every summer. Like July 1st through August 15th, I like don't really check email. And so feel free to steal that, right? And but like there are other ways to steal your time back across your year. I would encourage you. So are there a couple of weeks that you get off social media every year and you take that time back for yourself? So are there ways that you can really balance work motherhood, friends, and self across your year and across your week. That would just be my 2 cents.
Yeah, you just reminded me when when my kids were very little, I used to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work out because and I worked out at home because there was no time to go to the gym to do it
Yeah.
because I had to get them ready for school. But I could get up at 5 and work out in my living room while everybody was asleep.
Hmm.
And that was the investment in the time for myself. And so I do think it is having the boundary to know that you ought to be a good steward of your own life too, not just everybody else's.
All right, Naomi, what else you got? Uh,
All right, incredible. There was a few different variety of questions, and I think everyone in the country is feeling this a little bit of just this burden of the economy, a little bit of money or financial strain, and the tension that it feels like people can either pursue their gifts and passions or be, like financially compensated for it, and that you can't have both. So there's not a specific question here, but I would maybe say how to carry that financial pressure, how to make, financial decisions, or even just how to see more of your gifts and the way that God created you in your current work, if it's not fully what you want or thought you would be doing.
I mean, this is like a live question in my life right now.
I was just thinking, both of you are entrepreneurial,
Yeah,
so
yeah. But I will also say that I can be here now with the loving leader and hosting cohorts and doing keynotes and writing. I'm doing that, but it was because I was already planting those seeds and cultivating it before I had to get there, if that makes sense, right? So when the Sports Illustrated happened, let's just say, right? There became this moment where I somebody wanted to hear what I had to say. So, so the podcast started coming, the speaking engagement started coming. I was still working and doing all the things. Um, but I would take the time to start cultivating my voice.
Hmm.
And so when that season shifted, that the corporate piece went out, and then now my work becomes center, that's just building off of what had already started. But again, when I started practicing love, I wasn't planning to talk to anybody about it. I was investing in my own life. And so I think sometimes we think too far in terms of what a goal is, and can we just be good steward to the thing that God has given us? And for me, it meant, what does it look like to cultivate a practice of love? And as I did that, I became a loving leader. I transformed a company. I got this Sports Illustrated thing. I started a love, like it all built. But I started with, I want to be intentional about being love. Period. Full stop. And once that happens, and you commit to that kind of thing for yourself, you don't know where it's going to go. And to be honest, I was doing that, not getting compensated for it. In most cases, I was doing it because that's what I was called to do. Love 101, I don't get a dime for. But it's what is in me to offer others. And so I just think it's important for us to be to tend to our own lives and our own desires that God has put in us, so that we can be fully ourselves. And certain things we just don't have to figure out right now.
one step at a time.
Yeah.
Angie, anything to add about kind of life in an uncertain economic season?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I just want to start there. Like, I think it's really hard. I think the United States has gotten ridiculously expensive. Like, I get that. It really has. And many of us, will never be able to paid primarily for what we love to do every day. And so, I think that throughout my life, I've tried to do things that are really life-giving to me, like my passions, similar to what Jasmine's saying, like when I wasn't being paid for them, but then sometimes that can build your resume. And then you can like all those unpaid things, like for me, I think I spoke for like 9 years for conferences and workshops without being paid for it. I spent a long time doing it for free before anyone ever paid me to be a retreat leader. But then also like with my writing, I've written 3 books, but like I continue to write a lot of things that just bring me joy, like stuff that will never see the light of day. But I have a newsletter. That's something that like that could also like I think a news if you're someone who loves to write and share your ideas, starting a newsletter that's free or a Substack, and then at the end of that newsletter or Substack, giving people ways that they could hire you. Like for me, I do one-on-one sessions with people similar to Jasmine, where I do both like life and if you want to do like writing and that sort of stuff, but also like spiritual direction with people. And that's at the end of my newsletter. Like, hey, I do one-on-one sessions with people. If you want, like, join, let me know, reach out to me. And so I encourage you. Oh, and I'm a part of a writing group. Every Thursday morning, I'm a part of an online writing group. So I'm not in meditation. I go to this writing group instead. And it's like everybody who are like screenwriters, playwrights, nonfiction, fiction, poets. And it's amazing. And it really like stimulates that like design, so even when you're paid to be a writer, you're not like, none of us are like, it's nothing. Okay, most of us can't like buy a house with our writing. All right. And so like when you do it for the love of it too, it's like, so finding a group of people who enjoy what you enjoy, whatever that is. And you talk with each other, you inspire each other, you lift each other up. And so I think that's a way that I've integrated my passion into my week and my year without always like being paid big bucks for the things that make me really happy. But yeah, I just think if it's hard to pay the bills and you're doing work that's a grind, like I hear you. I see you. And that's hard. Yeah.
This has been such a rich conversation. I feel like I've just gotten to be on the sidelines watching two pros like give us all sorts of wisdom and kind of I love that image of the flashlight you had, Angela. I feel like this isn't exactly what you were saying, but you've shined a light on some things for me today that I'm like, I want to look more closely at that in my own life. And so I really believe that that wasn't just for me, but if it was, thank you. And that so many other people that joined us today experienced that. So I'm going to give a couple of announcements to kind of close us out. And then Jasmine's going to give us one more quote from Dr. Thurman just to kind of bring our time to a close. Again, just kind of maybe recenter all of us before we go into whatever the rest of our days hold. I know people are jumping on here from all sorts of places. But hopefully you're going out with a little more hope and a little more wisdom and a little more expectancy and joy about what God is up to in your life. So, a couple of announcements. I'm going to read them. Look for a follow-up email that will be coming your way soon from Dupree Center and also from Work Women in Calling that will give you some more resources, some follow-up from our conversation today. Also, if you've been following along with all these webinars that have been going on, the next one is going to be on Thursday, June 12th. It'll be our final conversation, and this is on the third of your life. You can also catch the replay of the webinar for the mothers of young children and also early career. If you just go to the video library at workwomenandcalling.com, you'll be able to access those. And last but not least, if you don't know that the Denver Institute of Faith and Work puts on an annual conference every fall on Work, Women, and Calling. This one is coming up on November 7th, 2025. You can go in person if you are in Colorado or you're just up for an adventure and you're not in Colorado. You can also access that online or you can look on their website and they have host sites all over the country. So those are all ways that if you've enjoyed this conversation and maybe you're looking for places to continue to think about these issues of calling and work and all the different ages and stages of your life that you can connect with that. And now to close this out, Jasmine, can you give us something to ring in our ears and in our hearts as we set out from here?
Oh,
Yeah.
Jasmine, do you mind can we tell them how they can connect with us?
Oh,
Oh,
sorry. My bad. I was just like moving right along.
No,
Angela,
yeah.
go first. Tell us how to connect with you.
go for it, Angela.
Okay, got so you can find me at my website, Angela Gorell, that's 2 R's and 2 L's.com. You can message me, you can DM me on Instagram. I love to connect with people. I think Jasmine, we both love to connect with people. So message us, email us. We'd love to hear from you. We both do one-on-one sessions with people. And then I'm leading a life worth living retreat this fall. So you can reach out to me about that if you want. But maybe the most fun part is that for me, my publisher gave you a code for today. So Gorell, my last name, 40 altogether. If you want to, you can get 40% off The Gravity of Joy and Braving Difficult Decisions at on the website for Erdman's. So thanks for being with us. I'm so glad you're here.
And
Yeah.
all of that'll be in the follow-up email too. So if you could not write that down fast enough or not getting the chat, then you'll make sure all of that'll be in the email too. So you'll be able to get the code and also find follow-up resources and ways to connect with Angela and Jasmine. What about
Yeah.
you, Jasmine? How can we
Yeah.
connect with you?
So definitely Instagram, you can find Love 101 Ministries there, as well as The Loving Leader. If you are more of a LinkedIn kind of person, you can follow me personally, Jasmine Bellamy, or The Loving Leader there as well. But on both of the websites, on the Love 101 website, you can learn more about spiritual direction and schedule there. My Calendly link is there. And then on the Loving Leader website, if you're interested in companioning there or having me as a keynote, or definitely if you are interested in cohort 3 of the Loving Leader, which will kick off September 9th, registration is open there as well.
Awesome.
All right. So I want to kind of pull some threads together that we were talking about today. And when we think about this invitation for inner work and answering that question, what is your name and who am I really? There is a beautiful part of the sound of the genuine that Howard Thurman mentions, that when we are hearing that voice in ourselves, we are hearing the voice of God. But he also offers another thread that I want to connect that we mentioned today about others and those we love and those we care for, and the role that finding the sound of the genuine in us connects to them. And this is what Howard Thurman says: there is in every person that which waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in herself. There is that in every person that waits, and listens for the sound of the genuine in other people. And when these two sounds come together, this is the music God heard when God said, "Let us make human in our image." So I hope we will listen to the sound of the genuine in ourselves and each other.
Amen. Thanks, Jasmine. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, everyone, for being a part of our conversation today. It was just a sweet sort of sacred space in the middle of my workday, and I hope that that was true for all of you as well. Be sure that you connect to some of the resources we're sending your way, and hope to see you all sometime soon. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Quinlan. Thank you.